Good morning, Warriors. Today is Tuesday, January 27th. Welcome to Morning Adrenaline. It is time, if you haven't already, to wake up the warrior. Hey, listen, today we're going to talk about something that you think you lost, but it was never actually gone. It didn't disappear. It didn't break. It just got buried. Buried under comfort, under routine, under the pressure to fit in. So this episode is about uncovering it and remembering who you were before you started playing small. See, somewhere along the way, you started believing something about yourself that was never actually true. You didn't make a big decision about it. You didn't argue with it. You didn't even notice it happening. You just let it settle. You told yourself, I'm not built like that. That's not really who I am. I'm more practical. And slowly, almost quietly, something in you completely shut down. And it didn't happen all at once, just enough to stay comfortable, just enough to fit in. And that belief began stripping things away. Your ability to stand out from the crowd, your willingness to lead, your originality, your sense of fulfillment. Because when this part of you goes quiet, you don't separate, you blend in. And blending in is expensive. It costs you opportunity, momentum, it costs you the full expression of who you are. So today, we are talking about personal creativity. And we're not talking about it as a talent. We're not talking about artwork or the arts. We're talking about personal identity. Let me give you an example of what happens when creativity gets buried and sameness takes over. I spent 27 years in the real estate business as a residential real estate agent, and here's what becomes obvious very, very quickly. If you do what everyone else does, you become invisible in a sea of thousands and thousands of people in your own city. And real estate is absolutely a business of sheep with very few lions. In real estate, lack of imagination, creativity, and boldness shows up everywhere. The same scripts, the same marketing strategies, sameness in social media posts, similar open house tactics, and the same kind of energy about people. And here's the funny part. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. If I'm scrolling on Facebook, I can tell you who all the realtors are without reading one single name or one single profile. Because the profile photos are undeniable. Similar pose, many of them have their crossed arms, kitchen backgrounds. But even if the background isn't a house or a kitchen and it's neutral, I can still tell. And I'm sure that you can too. Completely different people, same presentation. Now look, just to be clear, I'm not saying don't do the things that work. I'm saying separate yourself with some creativity, with some boldness. Not every wheel needs to get reinvented, but you have to invent yourself inside of a sea of similar faces. And if you're honest, you've seen this exact same pattern in your own field. When you copy what everyone else is doing, you don't compete on value, you compete on sameness. This is when you as a business or you as a person starts to become a commodity to those around you. Your predictability becomes your weakness. Listen, sameness never wins long term. That's not a market problem. That's not a skill problem. That is an identity challenge. Now, I didn't originate this next concept. I first heard it articulated clearly by Myron Golden. He pointed out something most people overlook. The first thing God tells you about himself is not that he rules. It's not that he's good, compassionate, loving. It's not that he commands. It's that he creates. So follow this. The Bible opens by God telling us the first thing about himself, and he tells us, I am creative. It's literally the first chapter and first verse, book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And if you believe you're made in the image of God, then creativity isn't optional for you. It's commanded. So here's the question of the day. What in your life have you chosen to blend in instead of stand out? And understand, this isn't just about business. It's not just about work. It's not just about social media posts. It's about the places where you defaulted to what was familiar instead of what was true, where you copied instead of thought, where you followed instead of led, where you stayed safe instead of stepping forward. See, the question of the day isn't here to shame you. It's not meant to shame you. It's here to show you your creativity didn't disappear. It just got buried. So before you decide whether this applies to you, you need to hear this clearly. This isn't about becoming more creative. It's about remembering who you are. See, you don't need more ideas. At least most of you don't. You don't need more ideas. You need to find a way to access them. You need a personality change. You don't. You need a way to access them. You don't need a personality change. You don't need permission from anyone. What you need is clarity. Because when creativity is treated like a skill, you dismiss it. But when creativity is understood as identity, you take responsibility for it. So over the next few points that we'll be talking about, you're going to be asked to learn something new. You're being asked to stop ignoring something that's already there. Listen for recognition, not information. So, point number 1 today. Creativity is not a talent you discover. It's an identity that you were given. It's not about being artistic. It's not about being a genius. It's not about entrepreneurship, although it can be. But that's not what we're talking about today. Creativity is your ability to bring order, value, or clarity where none existed before. And that shows up in how you think, how you problem solve, how you structure systems, how you communicate ideas, how you lead people. Every time you improve something, instead of just repeating it, that's creativity. Every time you see a better way and act on it, that's creativity. Every time you bring clarity where there was confusion, that is creativity. This isn't rare, guys. This is human. If you were made by a creator, you were made to create. Another way to say it, you don't wait to feel creative. You decide to think creatively. And when you stop outsourcing your thinking to scripts and templates, you start reclaiming that identity. That's when your work stops looking generic. That's when people start paying attention to you. That's when leadership starts to become natural. Point number 2, the reason you don't express creativity has nothing to do with your ability. It has everything to do with you feeling safe. So you've decided subconsciously to suppress it. Not because you're incapable of being creative, but because creativity carries responsibility. When you create, you own outcomes. When you improve something, you stand behind it. When you think differently, you risk being seen. So instead, you default to what's already approved. You follow those scripts, you copy those templates, you stay inside what is familiar, your little safe zone, your little safe space, your little box. You follow the butt in front of you like sheep. But in reality, it's not laziness, it's self-protection and self-preservation. And you may feel smart at first because normal feels safe, normal feels predictable, normal feels controlled, but normal never leads. Here's the cost most people never connect. What you suppress doesn't disappear, it stores. And over time, that stored potential turns into frustration. Usually not loud frustration. It's a very quiet, silent frustration inside of you that boils up. The kind that shows up as boredom, restlessness, a sense that you're underutilized, a sense that the grass is always greener somewhere else, a sense that you need a change of scenery. And in most cases, what you need is just a little creativity about your current surroundings and your current situation. That's not burnout, that's buried creativity. See, safety silence is the part of you that was meant to build. Point number 3, once creativity turns back on, something else changes immediately, and that is how you're perceived. Creativity isn't necessarily quitting your job. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's not necessarily burning everything down. There are things you may need to burn down, but not everything. It doesn't have to look like doing your own thing. Remember, we don't always have to create the wheel, but there are some ways that we can make it better. And there are some wheels that we can create because they still exist out there. But it doesn't always have to be doing your own thing. It's just finding a better way. It's how you show up inside what you're already responsible for. So what if you brought this energy to work? Thoughtful ideas instead of just updates. Suggesting better systems instead of accepting inefficiency. Solving problems before you're asked to. Offering clarity instead of complaining. That is creativity in motion. A lot of people don't think of those things as creativity, but you're not doing them. So you don't really probably know exactly what creativity is. And that's why it's time to start to articulate it. See, that is creativity in motion. Not all of your ideas will be used. It's okay. Unless you're in charge, it's okay. Not all of your ideas will be used, but they don't need to be. Because the shift isn't about approval, it's about positioning yourself. When you think creatively, you're seen differently by those around you. As someone who thinks ahead, as someone who sees the whole picture, as someone who leads without a title. Creativity changes how people position you before you ever change roles. See, leadership doesn't start with authority. It starts with contribution. And our last point is point number 4. The truth is creativity didn't leave you. You walked away from it. When you say, I wasn't born creative, that's not humility. It's amnesia. Your first assignment as a human involved creation. God made that clear in the very first sentence of Scripture. Creativity wasn't something you had to earn. It wasn't a reward for talent. It wasn't reserved for a certain personality type or status. It was part of your design, your God-given design. So if creativity feels distant now, it's not because it's gone, guys. It's because you stopped exercising it. And like anything else unused, it went dormant. What you don't use, you don't lose. It just sits and waits for you to catch up. The moment you stop telling yourself that creativity isn't for you, you give yourself permission to operate as who you actually are. So that brings me to where resistance gets removed, and don't confuse that with the need to try harder. You don't need more motivation. You don't need another push. You don't need another big idea. You need all of your resistance removed. And that's exactly what Sisu Vita was built for. It's what it exists to do. Not to teach you, not to hype you up, not to flood you with information, but to rewire you, to rewire how you see yourself. Through unlimited mind-shifting sessions, clear roadmaps that give you creativity structure, a membership environment with video training and tutorials that turn action into identity. See, this isn't about learning. This is about transformation. Your action is not to try harder. Your action is to step into an environment that removes the friction blocking you and who you already are. That's where creativity starts moving again, automatically. So here's the truth you don't get to ignore anymore. Creativity isn't extra. It isn't optional. It isn't reserved for other people. It's part of your design. When you suppress it, you don't just limit your work, you limit your expression. You limit your leadership. You limit your impact to the world. And over time, that costs you more than opportunity. It costs you alignment with yourself. You don't need to become someone new, guys. You need to stop living disconnected from who you already are. So here's the question I want to leave you with, and you may want to write it down. Since creativity is part of who you are, what is your strategy to unleash it for the world to see? Work your body, feed your mind, build your soul, wake up the warrior. See you guys tomorrow.
Stuck in your mind, fighting shadows of a story you left behind.